There are people who move through life carrying a weight no one else can see. A quiet heaviness behind the ribcage, a constant hum of vigilance beneath every breath. They are the ones who apologize for things that aren't their fault. The ones who double-check every door, every plan, every conversation. The ones who feel the tremor of tension in a room and immediately look inward as if the discomfort of the world must somehow be theirs to fix. Responsibility becomes a second skin, invisible, but always there. And for them, being at peace is never as simple as stepping away. Because the mind doesn't rest when it believes everything depends on its watchfulness. Recognition/emotional beginning. It often begins subtly, a slight tightening in the chest when someone frowns, a quiet panic when a message is left unanswered, a soft, persistent whisper, maybe you did something wrong. Maybe you should have prevented this. Maybe you should have known. People like this rarely announce their struggle. They simply adjust themselves, their tone, their choices, their presence, to keep the world around them steady. They become the stabilizers, the emotional guardians, the ones who anticipate needs before they're spoken, smooth conflicts before they erupt, and hold themselves accountable for everything that slips through the cracks. But beneath the calm exterior lies an internal story that rarely gets told, one woven with fear, memory, and the quiet longing to finally breathe without worrying about everything they cannot control. Most of this responsibility did not begin in adulthood. It grew slowly, shaped by the environments that demanded more from them than they were ready to give. Some grew up in unpredictable homes, places where moods shifted like weather, and a child learned to scan every expression for warning signs. Some became caretakers early, of siblings, of parents, of an emotional atmosphere that never felt safe on its own. Others learned responsibility from silence, from the absence of someone who should have been steady but wasn't. In that emptiness, they filled the role. They learned to hold things together because no one else would. And some simply absorbed the unspoken rules of their surroundings. Be good, don't cause trouble, make everyone comfortable, carry what others drop. Over time, responsibility became identity, not chosen, just inherited. Psychology describes this tendency as a specific pattern, an internalized sense of hyper-responsibility. It grows from a mix of attachment, temperament, and early conditioning. When a child repeatedly feels responsible for keeping peace or preventing conflict, the brain adapts. It becomes finely attuned to threat, even when threat isn't actually present. The amygdala becomes quick to activate, interpreting ambiguity as danger. The prefrontal cortex tries to manage the flood of concern by planning, monitoring, anticipating. It creates a loop. If I can stay ahead of problems, maybe nothing will fall apart.
But the body pays for this vigilance.
Cortisol rises. The nervous system stays partially braced. Even small mistakes feel catastrophic because they echo an old belief that one misstep can unravel everything. And so the mind becomes both protector and prisoner, trying to keep the world safe at the expense of its own sense of safety. People who feel responsible for everything live with a quiet tug-of-war inside them. On one side, there is the instinct to protect, the desire to shield others from discomfort, disappointment, or pain. It feels noble. It feels necessary. It feels like the only way to stay connected. On the other side, there is exhaustion, the silent wish to let go, even just for a moment, without guilt flooding in like a tide. But letting go feels dangerous, irresponsible, reckless. Even when the danger is imagined, they might tell themselves, it wasn't even my job. It wasn't my fault.
I know, I'm overthinking this.
But logic rarely wins against years of conditioning. The body responds before the mind can reason. A quick apology, a rush to fix, a tightening of the stomach when something goes wrong.
They resist rest because rest feels like abandonment.
They resist help because help feels like burdening someone else. They resist mistakes because mistakes feel like proof of failure.
And deep down, there is a persistent fear
That if they stop holding everything together, everything will fall apart. The turning point often arrives quietly, not in a dramatic collapse, but in a small, unexpected moment of clarity. Maybe they notice how the people around them keep living their lives, unaffected by the storms swirling in their own mind. Maybe someone says, "You're being too hard on yourself." And for the first time, the words don't bounce off, they land. Or maybe they realize that the world does not crumble. When they finally let a few things slip from their hands, the realization is simple yet profound. The weight they've been carrying was never entirely theirs. Not every silence means anger. Not every emotion needs managing. Not every problem belongs to them. A shift happens, slow, almost imperceptible, but real. They begin to see the difference between caring and controlling, between being needed and being responsible for everything. They start noticing the places where guilt had been standing in for love, and fear had been masquerading as duty. It's not a sudden release, it's a gentle loosening, a softening of the grip, a quiet understanding that responsibility does not have to be a burden, and that balance is possible, even for those who have only ever known extremes. Healing for people like this is not about abandoning responsibility, it's about redefining it. It begins with awareness, recognizing when old patterns are pulling the strings, when urgency rises without true danger, when self-blame appears out of habit rather than truth. They learn that the nervous system can be retrained, that safety can be internal rather than situational, that the body can slowly unwind from a lifetime of bracing, and they begin to return responsibility to its rightful places,
to other adults,
to circumstances beyond control, to the natural unpredictability of life. They practice small acts of release, not answering immediately, not apologizing reflexively, allowing others to sit with their own emotions. And in doing so, something unexpected emerges. Space, breath, relief. Healing becomes less about changing who they are and more about honoring who they've been. A person who learned to carry too much because they cared too deeply and feared too silently. And slowly, they realize that responsibility can coexist with ease, that protection can coexist with peace, and that they can be committed to the people they love, without sacrificing themselves at the altar of constant vigilance. There will always be people who feel the world a little more intensely, who listen for shifts others never notice, who try to hold the fragile pieces of life together, with hands that have grown tired but still keep reaching. But they deserve a life that doesn't feel like a test of endurance. They deserve a mind that doesn't treat every moment like a potential threat. And as they slowly step out from under the invisible weight, they begin to understand something profound. Nothing collapses when they rest. Nothing breaks when they breathe. The world continues turning even when they finally allow themselves to stop holding it up. And in that quiet, gentle truth lies the freedom they have always deserved.